Imagine waking up to the sound of your front window shattering and watching strangers rip $1,000 solar panels off your roof, all because your HOA decided to play judge, jury, and executioner. Before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss stories like this. I stood stunned on my lawn as HOA goons hauled away my $1,000 solar panels, completely unaware I was the government investigator assigned to their case. What would their faces look like when they discovered they just committed theft against the very person sent to shut them down? My hands shook as I ripped open the certified letter. Notice of violation blazed across the top in bold red letters. The Pinecrest Gardens Homeowners Association demanded I remove my brand-new solar panels within 48 hours or face daily fines of $100. I slumped into my kitchen chair, staring at the $11,000 receipt from Sunow Solutions still stuck to my fridge with a smiley face magnet. Just yesterday, I'd watched with pride as the installation team mounted those sleek black panels on my south-facing roof. My first step toward energy independence and doing my small part for the planet. "This has to be a mistake," I muttered, scanning the letter again. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor Marcus. "Saw Diane taking pictures of your roof this morning. Everything okay?" Diane Mercer, of course, the self-appointed neighborhood watchdog, who lived 3 doors down in a pristine white colonial with perfectly trimmed hedges. She'd been giving me the evil eye ever since I painted my front door navy blue last summer, instead of the HOA-approved subtle beige. I grabbed my approval documents from my home office. There it was, Form 32B External Modification Request with Richard Thompson's signature dated 6 weeks ago. The HOA president himself had approved my solar installation. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Speak of the devil. Diane stood on my porch in pressed khakis and a polo shirt, with the Pinecrest Gardens logo embroidered on the chest. Her silver bob didn't move an inch in the breeze. "I see you've received our notice," she said, not bothering with hello. "I must say those panels are quite an eyesore. The whole neighborhood can see them. That's generally how solar panels work, Diane. They need to face the sun." I held up my approval form. "Besides, I have permission right here." She snatched the paper from my hand, scanning it with narrowed eyes. "This form is outdated. The board approved new aesthetic guidelines last month. All exterior modifications now require review by the architectural committee. I wasn't notified of any new guidelines. It was in the newsletter. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. The one you apparently don't read. Richard approved this himself," I insisted. "Richard isn't the final authority. The board votes as a unit, and we've determined these panels violate Section 8, Paragraph 3 of our community standards. No installations that detract from the harmonious appearance of the neighborhood." My blood boiled. So solar panels are specifically protected under the State Energy Protection Act. HOAs can't arbitrarily deny. Save the legal lecture. Diane handed back my form. "Remove the panels or pay the fines. Your choice." As she walked away, she called, over her shoulder, "Oh, and your grass is half an inch too tall. That'll be in next week's violation notice." I closed the door, leaning against it with a sigh. My phone rang. My boss at the State Energy Commission. "Good news," she said when I answered. "The governor just approved our special investigation into HOAs blocking renewable energy installations. We've had dozens of complaints." "Perfect timing," I replied. "I'm dealing with exactly that right now at my place." "Really?" "Well, I need someone to lead this investigation who understands both the technical and personal sides of the issue." She paused. "How would you feel about heading it up?" I looked out my window to see Diane pointing at my house, talking animatedly with another board member. "I'd say I'm uniquely qualified." "Great. There's one HOA that's been particularly problematic. I'll email you the file. Pinecrest Gardens. Heard of it? My mouth went dry. You could say that. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and found an email already waiting. The file contained 12 separate complaints against my HOA, complete with documentation of denied solar applications and threatening letters. I spent the evening reviewing state laws and previous cases. The Energy Protection Act was crystal clear. HOAs could regulate placement and appearance within reason, but couldn't outright prevent renewable energy installations. What Pinecrest Gardens was doing wasn't just mean-spirited, it was illegal. The next morning brought another knock. This time, Richard Thompson himself stood at my door, tall and imposing in a tailored suit, despite the early hour. "I understand Diane spoke with you yesterday," he said. His voice was smooth, practiced, the voice of someone used to getting his way. "She did, and I showed her my approved form, which you signed." He winced slightly. "An oversight on my part. I didn't realize your installation would be so visible. Solar panels generally go on roofs, Richard." "Indeed. Look, we're not unreasonable people. The board is willing to waive the fines if you remove the panels by tomorrow. We can discuss alternative energy options that better align with our community standards, such as," he shrugged, "perhaps something less conspicuous, ground-mounted panels behind your fence, for instance. My backyard faces north. They'd be useless there. That's your technical problem to solve, not ours." His friendly mask slipped slightly. "The point is, those roof panels are coming down one way or another. Or what? We have methods of enforcing our rules." He straightened his already straight tie. "I'd hate to see this escalate unnecessarily." After Richard left, I called the installation company to warn them about possible issues. Then I emailed my boss requesting permission to fast-track the Pinecrest Gardens investigation. Her response came quickly. "Investigation officially opened. You have full authority as lead investigator. Document everything." I smiled, setting up a video camera facing my roof. Then I called Marcus. "Hey, can you do me a favor and keep an eye on my house today? I have a feeling the HOA might try something while I'm at work." "Sure, but what's going on? Let's just say not all is well in paradise." I paused. "By the way, didn't you mention wanting to install solar panels last summer?" "Yeah, but the HOA shot me down. Said they were too industrial-looking for a residential area. Would you be willing to share that rejection letter for my records?" "Sure, but why?" "I'll explain everything soon. Just watch my house today, okay?" At work, I compiled all the Pinecrest complaints into a single file, establishing a pattern of renewable energy denial stretching back 3 years. Then I drafted official notices of investigation, leaving the delivery date blank. Best to have everything ready. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus just after lunch. "Diane and Richard outside your house with a man in a truck taking pictures of your roof." I thanked him and texted back. "If they leave, let me know what direction the truck goes." 20 minutes later, they're gone. Truck had Valley contractors on the side, headed toward the main office. The HOA office closed at 5 p.m. I left work early, arriving at 4:30 to find Diane behind the reception desk. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "We're just closing up. I won't take long. I'd like to see the minutes from the meeting where the board discussed my solar panels. Those aren't ready yet. When will they be ready?" "When Richard approves them." She started gathering her things. "You'll have to come back another time." "Diane, I saw you and Richard at my house today with a contractor. What exactly are you planning?" "Merely obtaining a professional opinion on the aesthetic impact of your unauthorized installation." She smiled thinly. "For the record, they aren't unauthorized. I have approval." As I explained yesterday, that approval is no longer valid. I took a deep breath. Let me be very clear. If anyone touches my property without my consent, I will pursue all legal options available to me. Is that a threat? Her eyes narrowed. Just stating facts. Have a good evening. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the security camera feed on my phone, half expecting to see an HOA demolition crew in my yard. Around midnight, headlights swept across my driveway. I jerked upright, but it was just someone turning around. I must have fallen asleep eventually, because my alarm startled me awake at 6:00 a.m. I immediately checked the camera feed. My panels were still there, gleaming in the early light. Relief flooded through me. Maybe my warning had worked. Maybe they decided to follow proper legal channels after all. I should have known better. The hammer crashed through my front window, sending glass shards flying across my living room carpet. I froze in shock, coffee mug suspended halfway to my lips. 3 men in work clothes stood on my lawn. 2 held crowbars. Behind them, Richard Thompson pointed at my roof, while Diane Mercer clutched a clipboard, checking items off with quick, satisfied flicks of her pen. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, rushing outside in my bathrobe. "Enforcing HOA regulations," Richard replied coolly. "You were given notice and failed to comply." One worker was already on a ladder, prying at the edge of a solar panel. "Get off my property right now." I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead." Diane smirked. Section 14 of the HOA covenant you signed gives the board authority to remedy violations. We're simply exercising that right. Breaking my window is remedying a violation? Richard at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "That was unfortunate. We'll deduct the repair cost from the fines you've accrued." I dialed 911, hands shaking. "Yes, I need police at 147 Sycamore Lane in Pinecrest Gardens. People are trespassing and damaging my property." While waiting for the police, I filmed everything on my phone. The workers had removed 2 panels already, handling the expensive equipment carelessly. "Those cost $500 each," I said. "If they're damaged, I'll add it to my lawsuit." "What lawsuit?" Richard's confident facade cracked slightly. "The one I'll file for illegal trespassing, property damage, and violation of the State Energy Protection Act." I held up my phone. All documented. Marcus emerged from his house across the street, jogging over in sweatpants and a t-shirt. "What's happening?" I heard breaking glass. "The HOA decided to remove my solar panels by force," I explained loud enough for everyone to hear, after I specifically warned them not to touch my property. More neighbors appeared, drawn by the commotion. Some took out their own phones, recording the scene. Diane noticed the growing crowd and stepped closer to Richard. "Perhaps we should pause until the police arrive," she whispered, not quite quietly enough. "Absolutely not," he hissed back. "If we back down now, everyone will think they can ignore the rules." The workers had removed 5 panels when police sirens wailed in the distance. Richard straightened his jacket. "Officers," he greeted as 2 policemen approached. "We're simply enforcing homeowner association regulations. This resident installed unauthorized equipment." I stepped forward. "I have written approval right here." I showed them the form with Richard's signature. "They broke my window and are stealing my property." "We're removing a violation," Diane corrected. "The covenant gives us this authority." "Does it give you authority to break windows?" one officer asked. "That was an accident," Richard said quickly. The second officer, older with gray at his temples, surveyed the scene. "I've seen this before. HOA disputes can get messy." He turned to Richard. "Sir, regardless of your covenant, you can't damage property or enter someone's land if they've explicitly denied permission. Our legal counsel says differently. Then your legal counsel can explain that to a judge." The officer turned to the workers. "You need to stop what you're doing and leave this property immediately." The men looked to Richard, who nodded reluctantly. "This isn't over," Diane muttered as they retreated. Actually, it is, I replied, pulling an envelope from my bathrobe pocket. I grabbed it on my way out just in case. Richard Thompson and Diane Mercer, as lead investigator for the State Energy Commission, I'm serving you with official notice that Pinecrest Gardens HOA is under investigation for illegal prevention of renewable energy installations. Their faces went pale. Richard reached for the envelope with a trembling hand. What? Diane sputtered. The investigator assigned to your case. I couldn't help smiling. Have been for 2 days. Richard's eyes narrowed. This is a conflict of interest. Not at all. I disclosed my residence to my superiors immediately. They felt my first-hand experience would be valuable to the investigation. I gestured to the workers loading my damaged panels into their truck. And you've just provided excellent evidence. The older police officer cleared his throat. Sir, do you want to press charges for the broken window and property damage? Absolutely, I replied, not taking my eyes off Richard and Diane. And I need a copy of the police report for my official investigation file. Neighbors had gathered in a loose semicircle, whispering among themselves. You planned this, Richard accused. Installed those panels knowing we'd object just to trap us. I installed them because I care about renewable energy and reducing my carbon footprint, I corrected. Your illegal response is entirely your own doing. Diane's face hardened. The board will fight this. We have powerful friends. I'm counting on it, I replied. The governor is particularly interested in HOAs that think they're above state law. As the police took statements, Marcus sidled up beside me. State investigator, huh? You've been holding out on me. Professional discretion, I explained. But now that it's public, I lowered my voice. How many other neighbors have been denied permission for solar or other renewable energy? He thought for a moment. At least 7 that I know of. Eleanor on Oak Drive wanted wind turbines. The Jacksons tried for solar last year. The Patels asked about geothermal heating. I'll need to speak with all of them. Marcus grinned. I think they'll be very interested in speaking with you, too. Across the lawn, Richard was on his phone, pacing and gesturing angrily. Diane huddled with a small group of residents who'd always supported the board's strictest policies. The officer returned my copy of the police report. We'll need you to come down to the station later to make a formal statement. Of course. I watched as Richard ended his call, his face grim. Do you happen to know a good window repair company? My brother-in-law runs one. I can give you his card. As I thanked him, a sleek black car pulled up. A woman in a sharp business suit emerged, marching straight to Richard and Diane. Even from a distance, I could see their relief at her arrival. Who's that? I asked Marcus. Heather Donovan, their lawyer. He frowned. She's ruthless. Shut down every attempt to challenge the HOA for years. Heather's gaze locked on me. She whispered something to Richard, who pointed at me and nodded. This just got more complicated, I murmured. Are you worried? Marcus asked. I watched as Heather strode toward us, briefcase swinging. No, I've got something they don't. What's that? My phone buzzed with a text from my boss. Governor requesting update on Pinecrest Gardens investigation. Media showing interest. I smiled. The law on my side. My heart pounded like a drum as I pushed open the doors to the community center. Every head turned my way. Some neighbors whispered behind their hands. Others glared openly. Richard Thompson froze mid-sentence at the podium, his mouth hanging open as I walked in wearing my official State Energy Commission jacket. As I was saying, Richard quickly recovered. This troublemaker has violated our... I slapped my government badge and ID on the table. The loud smack echoed through the suddenly silent room. Richard Thompson and members of the Pinecrest Gardens HOA board, I'm here in my official capacity as lead investigator for the State Energy Commission, I announced, my voice steady despite my racing pulse. Yesterday, you illegally trespassed on my property and stole $1,000 worth of legally installed solar equipment. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I spotted Diane shrinking into her seat, her earlier smugness replaced by wide-eyed panic. That's absurd, Richard stammered, loosening his tie. We were simply enforcing our rules. About rules that violate state law, I cut in, connecting my laptop to the projector. The screen filled with Section 714 of the State Energy Protection Act. This clearly states that HOAs cannot prohibit or restrict homeowners from installing solar energy systems. A bead of sweat trickled down Richard's temple. We didn't know you worked for the government. Would that have made a difference? Would you have followed the law if you knew I could fight back? No answer. I clicked to my next slide. For 8 months, my office has tracked 12 separate complaints from Pinecrest Gardens residents. Each time you cited aesthetic concerns to block solar installations. Mrs. Jenkins, a quiet widow from Oak Lane, suddenly stood up. They denied mine last spring, said it would hurt property values. Others joined in a chorus of frustrated voices, sharing similar stories. Richard banged his gavel furiously. Order. This is not an open forum. I pulled out my phone and played the recording from yesterday. Diane's voice filled the room. The board voted unanimously. Those eyesores violated our aesthetic guidelines. Diane jumped to her feet. He tricked us. This whole thing was a setup. I've lived here for 3 years, I replied calmly. I didn't ask for this assignment. But when my own HOA broke the law, stole my property, and then bragged about it, well, let's just say this investigation became personal. Richard's face had turned an alarming shade of red. You have no right to record private conversations. Actually, our state has one-party consent laws for recording. More laws you should have checked before breaking into my property. I projected photos of my empty roof, the damage to my lawn from their trucks, and a clear shot of my panels stacked in Diane's garage, courtesy of Marcus, who had documented everything. Let me be perfectly clear, I continued. This isn't just about my solar panels anymore. This is about systematic abuse of power that ends today. The community center doors suddenly burst open again. A tall woman in a crisp suit strode in, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. Catherine Reynolds, County Property Inspector, she announced, dropping a thick folder on the table beside me. Based on multiple reports and evidence gathered over the past year, I'm serving official notice that all HOA board operations are suspended effective immediately pending full investigation. One of the officers stepped forward. Mr. Thompson and Ms. Mercer, we'll need statements from both of you regarding the removal of private property. Richard's gavel slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor as chaos erupted around us. You can't do this, Diane shrieked, backing away from the officer. We run this neighborhood. Catherine fixed her with a cool stare. Not anymore. I hadn't expected county involvement so quickly. My investigation had apparently intersected with Catherine's broader probe into HOA violations. As the officers escorted a protesting Richard and Diane to separate corners for questioning, Catherine whispered to me, "This goes deeper than solar panels. We found financial irregularities in their records dating back 3 years." How bad? I asked. Missing funds? Suspicious contracts? Unexplained payments? Your solar panel situation just gave us the opening we needed. A hand touched my shoulder. I turned to find Mrs. Jenkins, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. "My late husband wanted those panels. Our electric bills are killing me on my fixed income." One by one, other neighbors approached, sharing their stories. Eco-friendly landscaping denied. Harassment over minor infractions. Selective enforcement of rules. Marcus pushed through the crowd with his phone out. "You need to see this," he said urgently. "I've been documenting board meetings for months. Look what I recorded last week." Depressed play on screen. Richard and Diane huddled with a man in an expensive suit. "Don't worry about legal pushback," the man said. "My company can't afford to lose customers to Home Solar. Keep blocking those installations, and we'll make sure your consulting fees continue." I looked up sharply. "Who is that?" "CEO of Sunshine Electric," Marcus replied, "our regional power company." As realization dawned, I felt the investigation expanding far beyond what I'd imagined. This wasn't just an HOA breaking the law. This was corporate corruption. Catherine viewed the video, her expression hardening. "We need to bring in the state attorney general. This crosses multiple jurisdictions now. Outside the community center windows, news vans were already arriving. Someone had tipped off the media. What happens now?" I asked Catherine. Now, she smiled grimly. Now we followed the money. The sharp crack of something hitting my bedroom window jolted me awake at 3:17 a.m. Heart racing, I cautiously peered through the blinds. The word snitch dripped in red paint down my front door. I grabbed my phone to document the vandalism, then dialed the police. Fourth incident this week, I told the dispatcher wearily. 6 days had passed since the explosive HOA meeting, 6 days of escalating harassment. First came the threatening notes under my door, then my mailbox was smashed. Yesterday, someone had slashed my car tires. After giving my statement to the responding officers, I couldn't go back to sleep. I brewed coffee and reviewed the case files spreading across my dining table. The investigation had mushroomed beyond Pinecrest Gardens to 5 other HOAs in the county, all with suspicious patterns of solar denial, all with financial ties to Sunshine Electric. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Check your email. Sent something important. The attachment was a scanned letter addressed to all Pinecrest residents except me. Emergency notice. Your property values are under attack by government overreach. Emergency meeting tonight, 7 p.m., Richard's house. Come defend your community. I forwarded it to Catherine with a quick note. They're rallying support. Her reply came instantly. Already on it. Stay home tonight. Don't engage. Easier said than done. By noon, neighbors I'd known for years crossed the street to avoid me. The friendly wave from the mail carrier was replaced with a hesitant nod. I'd become a pariah in my own neighborhood. I was documenting the paint vandalism when a black SUV with tinted windows cruised slowly past my house for the 3rd time. The hair on my neck stood up. This felt different from neighborhood hostility, more professional, more threatening. My desk phone rang. My supervisor at the State Energy Commission. We've received a formal complaint against you, she said without preamble. Allegations of harassment, unprofessional conduct, and conflict of interest. That's ridiculous. I'm the victim here? I know that, she said quietly. But Richard Thompson's brother-in-law is State Senator Montgomery. There's pressure coming from above to reassign you. My stomach dropped. They're trying to derail the investigation. Exactly. I'm fighting it, but you need to be extremely careful. Document everything by the book. Understood. I barely had time to process this when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Diane standing on my porch alone, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, keeping the security chain latched. What do you want? Her usual arrogance was gone. They're going to pin it all on me, she said, voice trembling. Richard and the others. They're setting me up to take the fall. Why tell me? I'm the enemy, remember? Because I kept records. Her eyes darted nervously to the street. Every meeting, every decision, every payment. I'm not going down alone. Before I could respond, a car horn blared. Richard sat in his Mercedes at the curb, staring daggers at us. I shouldn't be here, Diane whispered. Tonight's meeting, they're planning something big. Not just against you. Anyone who supports solar. She hurried away, climbing into Richard's car. Their heated argument was visible even through the closed windows. I immediately called Catherine. Could be a trap, she warned, or she's looking to cut a deal. Either way, we need those records. As twilight fell, cars began filling Richard's circular driveway. From my window, I counted over 40 neighbors, far more than attended regular HOA meetings. My phone pinged with messages from the few allies I had left in the neighborhood. They're talking about a class action lawsuit against you personally. Richard says he has proof you falsified evidence. They're collecting $500 from each household for legal fees. The mounting pressure felt suffocating. Everything I'd worked for was at risk. My job, my home, my reputation. A gentle knock at my back door startled me. Mrs. Jenkins stood there with Marcus and 3 other neighbors I recognized from the meeting. May we come in? Mrs. Jenkins asked. Not everyone believes their lies. Over tea at my kitchen table, a surprising counter-resistance formed. Marcus had been tracking the HOA's financial records for months. Mrs. Jenkins had documentation of selective enforcement. Others shared stories of intimidation when they challenged board decisions. "We need to fight back," Marcus insisted. "Not just about solar panels anymore. This is about community bullying." A text from Catherine interrupted us. "Turn on Channel 7 News now." We crowded around my TV as the anchor reported. "Breaking news tonight as the state attorney general announces an expanded investigation into alleged corruption between multiple HOAs and Sunshine Electric. Anonymous whistleblowers claim the power company paid HOA board members to block residential solar installations." The report cut to hidden camera footage of Richard meeting with Sunshine Electric executives, discussing problem homeowners and consulting fees for each denied solar application. My phone exploded with notifications. Catherine. Diane came through, turned over everything. Mrs. Jenkins squeezed my hand as we watched Richard's face fill the screen, caught in the harsh glare of news cameras outside his house, the planned meeting against me disintegrating as reporters shouted questions. "Is it true you received payments to deny solar permits? Did you authorize illegal removal of a state investigator's property? Are other HOA boards involved in this scheme?" My momentary triumph evaporated when a breaking news banner flashed across the screen. "Sunshine Electric files for emergency injunction against State Energy Commission investigation." Catherine called seconds later. "They're playing hardball. Got their corporate lawyers claiming unlawful targeting of a public utility. They're demanding all our evidence and witness statements. Can they do that? They've got friends in high places." Judge Harrison granted a temporary restraining order. "We have 48 hours to show cause or surrender our files." A loud commotion outside drew us to the window. A process server stood on my porch, papers in hand, while a news crew filmed from the sidewalk. "What now?" Mrs. Jenkins asked, fear evident in her voice. The doorbell rang insistently. Through the peephole I could see the server's impatient face. "Now," I said, squaring my shoulders, "we show them what happens when they mess with the wrong homeowner." I opened the door as cameras flashed, accepting the thick legal document with steady hands. The fight had only just begun, and it was about to get much bigger than my missing solar panels. "Look at this." Eleanor's hands shook as she played the first recording on her tablet. My jaw dropped as Richard's voice filled my living room. "Deny first, negotiate never." I leaned forward, hardly believing my ears. "You recorded all their meetings?" Eleanor nodded, her eyes bright with purpose. "For 2 years. They thought nobody would stand up to them. We stayed up until 2 a.m. watching dozens of videos, the HOA targeting families they didn't like, Diane mocking homeowners behind their backs. But the worst came from a meeting 6 months ago. These solar panel requests are getting out of hand," Richard complained to the board. "I've spoken to my friends at Sunshine Electric. They're losing customers to these home systems. If we block installations in our community, they'll give us each a kickback." My heart pounded. This is bribery, actual criminal bribery. I called Catherine immediately despite the late hour. "I have proof, not just of them breaking solar laws, but of corruption." By morning, Catherine arrived with 2 officers and a laptop. We transferred Eleanor's videos, the officers taking detailed notes. "This changes everything," Catherine said, her professional demeanor slipping to reveal genuine shock. "This isn't just about your solar panels anymore." My phone buzzed with text messages from neighbors. Diane was telling everyone I'd invited government thugs to intimidate the community. I showed Catherine. "They're desperate," she said, typing rapidly on her phone. "And they should be." Hours later, as I made coffee, police cars pulled up outside Richard's house. Through my kitchen window, I watched officers escort him to a patrol car. Across the street, the same scene played out at Diane's. My doorbell rang constantly as neighbors gathered, buzzing with questions. "Richard and Diane have been detained for questioning about corruption and commercial bribery," I explained, standing on my porch. "They took kickbacks to block our solar panels. Is that why they denied my solar application last year? And my energy-efficient windows?" Called someone else. Soon 30 neighbors filled my front yard, sharing stories of denials, fines, and harassment. Someone ordered pizza. Others brought folding chairs. What started as confusion transformed into a community awakening, finally standing up to those tyrants. Marcus raised his soda can in a toast as sunset painted the sky. A black SUV screeched to a halt at the curb. A man in an expensive suit marched up my walkway, ignoring the crowd. "Are you the homeowner?" he demanded, thrusting an envelope at me. I nodded, opening it as neighbors went quiet. "This is a cease and desist letter from Parkview Legal representing Sunshine Electric." I read aloud. "They're demanding I drop all accusations, sign a non-disclosure agreement, or face ruinous legal consequences." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I felt a moment of doubt. This was a huge company with expensive lawyers. "They think they can scare us into silence," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Not anymore." Eleanor stepped forward, tablet in hand. "I have videos of Sunshine Electric executives meeting with Richard in his backyard, discussing exactly how to block solar installations." The suited man's face went pale. Neighbors raised their phones, recording his reaction. "This is harassment," he stammered, backing toward his SUV as dozens of cameras followed him. "You'll be hearing from our legal team." As his car sped away, Marcus squeezed my shoulder. "What happens now?" Before I could answer, phones throughout the crowd lit up with the same news alert. A neighbor read it aloud. Breaking. State Attorney General announces sweeping investigation into HOA corruption and utility company collusion across 3 counties. We all stood in stunned silence as the implications sank in. This wasn't just our neighborhood anymore. How many communities had faced the same corruption? Eleanor gripped my arm, her voice barely a whisper. "They're coming back." Down the street, the black SUV had returned with 3 more behind it. "Get off my property now," I shouted as men in dark suits approached from the SUVs. My neighbors formed a protective circle around me, phones recording everything. The lead man raised his hands. "We're not here to threaten anyone. I'm James Wilson, Sunshine Electric's new chief legal officer." "More legal threats?" Marcus challenged. "No threats." James looked uncomfortable as cameras pointed at him. "The CEO sent me to offer a settlement before this gets worse." That night, I couldn't sleep. The settlement offer sat on my kitchen table. New solar panels for me, money for the community, and a signed admission of wrongdoing if I signed a partial confidentiality agreement. I called Catherine at dawn. "Can I trust them?" "No," she said bluntly, "but I've spoken with the Attorney General." "Accept their first gesture, but we're still investigating. This goes beyond your neighborhood." 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind. Richard and Diane remained under house arrest, wearing ankle monitors. Sunshine Electric installed top-of-the-line solar panels on my roof at no cost. News vans came and went as our story made headlines. HOA corruption exposed. Homeowner turns tables on board. I received hundreds of emails from people across the state describing similar HOA abuses. I forwarded each one to Catherine, who added them to the growing investigation. On a crisp Saturday morning, workers replaced my garden fence, another part of the settlement. I supervised while sipping coffee when a car I didn't recognize parked across the street. A woman stepped out, looking nervous. "Are you the solar panel guy from the news?" I nodded cautiously. "I'm Laura Thompson, Richard's wife." She glanced around, clutching her purse. "Can we talk privately?" Inside my kitchen, Laura's hands trembled as she pulled out a flash drive. Richard kept records of every HOA in the county working with Sunshine Electric. Names, dates, payment amounts. He called it his insurance policy. "Why are you giving me this?" Tears filled her eyes. "They promised to reduce Richard's charges if he testified against bigger players. But yesterday, Sunshine Electric's lawyers told him they'd make sure he took all the blame." The flash drive contains spreadsheets, emails, and meeting notes detailing a 5-year scheme across 26 neighborhoods. I called Catherine immediately. 2 months later, I stood in the community center as our neighborhood elected a completely new HOA board. Eleanor became president with Marcus as treasurer. Their first act, passing new bylaws protecting homeowners' rights to renewable energy. I spotted a moving truck outside Diane's house as I drove home. Her husband loaded boxes while she directed him, occasionally glaring at the new solar panels now visible on 5 houses on our street. Catherine's car pulled into my driveway as I arrived home. "Quite a view," she remarked, looking at my gleaming solar array. "The panels or Diane leaving?" "Both," she laughed, handing me an official envelope. Inside was a letter from the governor's office offering me a position heading a new task force on HOA reform. "They want you to do statewide what you did here, protect homeowners from corrupt boards." The case had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. Sunshine Electric CEO resigned in disgrace. 3 county commissioners were under investigation. Richard and Diane faced criminal charges for bribery and fraud. That evening, neighbors gathered in my backyard for a celebration. Children played on swing sets that once violated HOA rules. Gardens bloomed with native plants instead of the required ornamentals from the old guidelines. "I never planned any of this," I told Marcus as we watched the sun set. "I just wanted to lower my electric bill. Sometimes the small battles lead to the biggest victories," he replied. As darkness fell, Eleanor waved everyone's attention to her tablet. "Breaking news," she announced. The screen showed Sunshine Electric's headquarters, with FBI agents leading executives out in handcuffs. Cheers erupted around me. A reporter on screen said, "Sources say evidence provided by a homeowner led to today's raids." "Speech," someone called. Suddenly, everyone looked at me. I stood, uncomfortable with the attention. "I'm not special. I just refused to back down when they took my solar panels." "That's exactly why we need you," Eleanor said, holding up a clipboard. "The governor's task force is just the beginning. People across the state are asking for your help." I looked at my neighbors, people who barely spoke to each other months ago, now united against corruption. My phone buzzed with yet another message from a homeowner in another city facing similar battles. "I started this just wanting clean energy for my home," I said, taking the clipboard. "Now I'm fighting for every homeowner's right to choose." Marcus raised his glass, to the power of one person standing up. As everyone cheered, I glimpsed Diane watching from her half-empty house across the street. Her face twisted with anger as her influence crumbled before her eyes.